We didn't do the. This is
You
the
didn't.
green room. So
You didn't even get the
do
music.
surprise
going.
reveal.
Like you didn't even do like the music.
Well, the music is going. I gotta actually turn it off. I turned it way down.
Okay.
Turned it way down.
So Ilya, I'm just going to tell you. So in the green room, this is like your opportunity to kind of feel the vibe of the space, and part of that vibe is a really uncurated soundtrack by our host.
All right.
We talk at them a lot in the podcast, hoping that they're going to add more musical channels for us to select from. Kurt, I can't hear any music. Do you have
turned
music?
it off now. Oh wait, I guess you want it. You want it back on?
It's the green room, man.
It's the green room. It's the green room. Yeah, this is the green room.
They there. Is it better? This is the hip hop channel. So Ilya, we have only a very small set of channels to choose from.
Sounds good.
And we used to have fewer channels, but they heard us. They added a few.
Expand to a long short list. This is something else. It's a lo-fi. It's
like a John Wick movie, like an intro for a John.
I'm changing channels,
So as Kurt is finding the right channel for us to chit chat, I don't know if you knew this or not, but fun fact, Kurt's a twin. And his twin is a DJ.
Well,
I did not know.
In his evening.
Well, yeah, I mean, like in his.
He's an engineer by trade.
He's an engineer by trade, but like the fun side of Charlie is, he's a DJ.
You busting on engineers?
Maybe just a little.
Yeah, my brother.
Green room. The green room. We're allowed. So.
But he did our intro and outro music. So when we actually do that part, that's
nice.
Little gift. We didn't have to pay for that one.
Well, I didn't know you were a twin. So you're double trouble. Well, that's right. That's unfortunate. That's
identical twins. Yeah.
That makes the world a heavier place, man.
Yeah. Well, and he was also our first guest. I demanded he was the first guest because I needed proof of life. So.
Right. Yeah. I just had two cameras going. Two cameras going at the same time. Yeah. Yeah. So it's the thing is we grew up our 18 years together in Connecticut. In that sense, together, like the whole family before college, all that stuff, and then went off to college, right? To different colleges, and we've never lived together, So most people that I encounter these days, post college or post high school, don't automatically know. Like when we were growing up in high school or grade school, we were just known as the twins. It was this. Oh, it's Kurt and Charlie, or Kurt.
It's the twins.
Like you invite one, the other one always comes with.
Who's older?
Charlie. By a few seconds, a few minutes.
It always changes every time he says it. It always changes, like how much he's older. It's just
cascading.
Well, nobody believes. My mom tells the story. I mean, I'm never gonna have mom on the podcast.
That is like my white whale. Like is
the get. That's the big get.
That's the big get.
Biggest get
is to get mom on. She is our biggest fan. She hypes.
She does like everything.
She's a good hype person. So yeah.
You got to have her on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Even just for a minute, we can cut it.
Minute.
Yeah.
And then she can tell the story about who's older.
I tell you, nobody tells it like mom tells it. I'll tell you that.
I'm sure.
I'll tell you that.
She was doing it in first person there, man.
Yeah. It can't get any more authentic than that. 100% in the room.
All right, so are we ready for the real episode? We've done a little bit of rando origin stories, and I'm sure there will be more.
Okay.
Is your stomach? Is your stomach growling? You getting hungry? Is that the deal?
I might be. Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I have to. I gotta cue up the buttons so that I don't do what sometimes happens. Is
turn the music off again?
Yes. Well, the music is going to go off during the actual episode.
Okay.
So here we go. All right. See, unfortunately, so that you don't even hear the theme song, Jamie. You just get the black screen.
Oh no, you hear the theme song. Yeah, you see it too. It's just like the whole world goes dark for a minute. And what I didn't know, Ilya, is that Kurt can still see us. Yeah. So like our cameras are still live to him. So like if you make faces at him, which I try to tend to do during that moment, yeah, exactly. Like no one else can see it, but he can see it. So
yeah. Yeah. See, I'm the account holder, so I get all the privilege. All right. Well, now I know all the background. All right, ready? Here we go. See, I'm making faces at you guys.
Wow. Well, getting kind of sketchy in here.
Yeah.
So Jamie, normally we do a little bit of a reveal for our special guest, but I guess custom
I was going to say, but before you do the reveal, can you do the little typey at the top of the screen?
Oh, you mean yes.
Thanks,
sorry,
buddy.
You might hear some keystrokes.
Yeah.
For a second. I had to work on the spelling there, so we're good. Okay. All right, now we're ready. So, you want me to flash? Oh, sorry, no loud noises. Let's put that on the screen, and now we can say our special guest, Ilya Azarov, FAIA, is with us. Welcome, Ilya.
Yeah, hey. Episode 154. Here you go.
Wow, thanks for having me, guys. It's great to see you both. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I know. With your social media, for all the things that you do, which is one of my favorite things to see, is where your wheels are going up, as you say, as the airplane's going up, because you're always taking off somewhere. And so it's always exciting to see your ventures in business and just as a spokesperson for our profession. So,
well, thanks, Kurt. Yeah,
I'd say, Ilya, my question is, has the family at any time in the recent years like bought you an outfit that has like red and white stripes and a toque?
Toque, for those that are not Canadian.
No. See, no. See, like Ilya, it comes from a state that has snow, so he knows where I'm at with this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where's Waldo?
Yeah.
No, they have not. But I'll put that on my list.
I'm giving them ideas. When the boys are not sure, hey, no more cups, for dad. Let's get something creative. Cosplay with that. So
I'll give it to them and under advisement and see what comes of it. Those two boys are pretty creative, but yeah, they always find something crazy for me.
Yeah, no, they seem like good kids. So.
You're planting some seeds of yeah.
Well, Ilya, you've been to some far off places. When I was a youngster,
yeah,
my twin and I, as we said in the green room, for those that haven't met my twin brother. So as we grew up, my dad did a little bit of international business relations, and he would come back with a souvenir, obviously one for each of us.
Were they always the same?
I thought you were going to say you were the souvenirs. I was like, whoa.
No.
This episode went off the rails, and we're only like 2 minutes in. What happened?
No. He would bring us things back from where he's been to, went to China, Poland, Kenya, and he'd find, some thing like from Kenya, there was a little drum. It's kind of cool, So anyway, so you bring these things back. So are you following? I mean, not that you grew up with me, but do you have a similar tradition of bringing a little.
Well, I was always wondering where that little
keepsakes.
Kenyan drum came from. I didn't know
That's
it came from my dad. So. But thanks for that. No, I do the same thing for my kids. My dad kind of did the same thing. He traveled quite a bit for business, not as much as I do, but he always made sure that he brought something back for us that would speak to geography and culture. And so I try to do the same for my kids and get them interested in these places. And I've had good fortune to be able to take them along sometimes too. And that's been eye-opening for them. But yeah, the gifts, whatever you can find, usually it's handmade,
Yeah. That's cool. I'm glad. I mean, it's just a random thought that sort of just hit me right now, and I figured it'd be kind of a fun. It's nice to see that traditions.
Did you appreciate what he brought back for you? Did it make you question about where he was and what he was doing?
Yeah. Especially, I mean, I particularly remember the drum because I mean it had cowhide, full cowhide cover, and and it a particular look, and
cool.
After as I got older, right, and understood what he did a little more, you start to ask about the different places. It sort of becomes like a talking point or something that derives a talking point. So yeah, it's and he passed away when we were in college, so like now it just becomes more of a sentimental something to think about in a positive light, since I don't get to have the conversations anymore.
Yeah,
because he's gone. But yeah, so thanks.
Yeah. Same question. Boat. I lost my dad right after college, but those are the things that I miss the most, are just those conversations. But I totally appreciated those things. Kind of opens your eyes to a greater world out there, and also that your dad's thinking about you when he's on the road. That's kind of cool, because you know that he's caring for you in every way that he can. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, been there, understand it. As a kid, as a dad, and I think couldn't say it any better. I think that so as we were alluding to, where in the world is Ilya? So and then also, who is Ilya? So episode 154. Obviously, Kurt and I know you very well. We're very excited to have you. We don't do interviews and special guests a ton. But when we do, it's for obvious reasons. There's a familiarity with folks that we're excited about. As previous guests have alluded to, some of them love to sketch, some of them don't. Some of them quietly sketch in the corner.
Some of them like coffee, some of them don't.
I know. We have so many questions to ask. But first off, can you just sort of quickly kind of introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Ilya Azaroff. I'm an architect, geographer, educator, and I'm a dad, as you'd heard. And I run a practice called Plus Lab, and we have offices in New York and Los Angeles. And I teach at New York City College of Technology. It's a minority-serving institute in New York City, probably the largest undergraduate architecture school in the tri-state area. And a lot of the work that I do happens to be with frontline communities that are facing the direct impacts of climate. A lot of indigenous communities all across the world, and my expertise has gotten me to a place where the federal government sends me all around the world to help foreign governments and communities to really figure out what their next steps are and try to secure their future. But ultimately, I'm a guy that takes coffee with cream. Just thought I'd put that out there. Got to make sure that people understand that.
There's no judgment on this show. I mean, there's maybe judgment when we do like Upper Peninsula, geography, and we're at that one rest stop. Yeah. But other than that.
But Jamie,
I'll never live that down. I bought gas station coffee one time, and Jamie won't let me live that down.
Well, look, you survived, so there's got to be something tough going in you, man. That's good.
Yes. I represent a personal coffee resiliency.
What you? Okay.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that is. But
I'm alluding to the resilient design work that you do.
But the other thing that I would say is that you guys know me through leadership. I've been a leader with inside the AI and outside the AIA with NGOs, not for profits, all over the place. But with the AIA, I met you guys through the YAF, and aside from Young Architects Forum, I've served at sort of every level of the institute, and I'm currently serving on the national board. And with Cicada, I'm the chair of the Committee on Climate Action and Design Excellence. So I guess that kind of encapsulates a lot of the brief bio that you're looking for. And then I'm sure you'll dig a few more elements out that I'm not willing to share initially, but I'm sure you'll get at them.
Yeah, we're going to get there. Trust me. Yeah. We're disarming. We've heard we're disarming, in our banter.
I'd say that's probably a good trait that we have.
It is a good trait.
But I do remember, Jamie and I we started this podcast through our mutual time together from the Young Architects Forum, and afterward, maintaining the relationship, and why we continue to do this, right? 154 episodes in is because of that shared interest and the opportunity that we had to share together working on the Young Architects Forum, and obviously, as you mentioned, that's where we met you as well, and some of our previous special guests. And what to recall, I just wanted to bring it up briefly, is to recall the recent conversation with Ben Kasdan and Evelyn Lee about Ben put it in this way, that the time that we spent together on the Young Architects Forum was this sort of strange magical time that we got a lot of things done, worked super well together from people across the country, and we're able to make it the whole task or the work on the committee also fun, right? I mean, to me, it was the best experience I had on service to the Institute, before or after. And not that it all has to be as magical as it was on the Young Architects Forum, but we kind of take that sentiment, I think, and continue to try and imbue that into future leadership opportunities and things like that, because it can happen.
Yeah.
Right. It doesn't always have to be sort of a volunteer chore, for a lack of a better term. But anyway, so I appreciated that most of all out of the most recent conversations with, say, Ben and Evelyn, is that we all agreed that it was a special experience and a special group of people. So yeah, hopefully you feel the same way too.
I do. I really do. I say this all the time, that the best thing about the YAF is that you find your colleagues that are your peers that you can rely on for advice. Everything from starting my own firm to hiring practices to just talking about technology, and there is no sort of there's a trust factor that you build up with your colleagues in the YF, because you're all in the same storm and you're all in the same boat, and you're trying to figure out how to navigate your future, everything from family, still dealing with college loans in some places, and everything all the way down the line. And in some way you help each other navigate through it. So I find it to be one of the most special times. And I agree with you, Kurt. The ideas that we put forward, the YF, man, they were transformative to the Institute. That is no joke. Just everything from the Connections magazine at the time really was probably the pinnacle of what AI was putting out as publications. And I'm not diminishing what else was out there. That was, at that time, an extraordinary magazine. It still is. But we also changed governance. So the collective leadership that we provided was excellent. And,
well, I
enjoyed it.
Yeah, and it's I think it's what's funny is, like, I joke about my Canadianness and my poor vocabulary.
Wait, you're Canadian? Hold on.
I'm Canadian. Yeah, I know. Right.
Oh wait, do you guys have a translating service on this? Do you guys need something like
sometimes we need it. If you
maple syrup.
Don't ask me to spell, and don't ask Kurt to run the numbers. because it's just those are just the two things
right.
that
spelling and math. That's why this podcast is about coffee and sketching.
Sketching. We keep it simple for both of us.
Sometimes sports.
Brilliant.
But on that sort of note about vocabulary, it's like, like I can say that I knew what the word cohort was, but after YF, like I felt comfortable using it for the first time, because it really truly was one, and not necessarily something I was necessarily seeking out in sort of service to the Institute, but coming out of it, it was so refreshing. I mean, and all of us have, and what's interesting is all three of us too, is we're all, have been educators or are educators. We're also in private practice to some degree. We also public servants to a certain degree as well.
Yep.
And then sort of that service, component just sort of kind of runs that thread, constant. But one thing that I'm always sort of struck by in talking to anybody in our profession more so, but I mean, I think it probably resonates in others as well, is, with service to the Institute, at whatever level you do it at, you're bound to have these ebbs and flows of energy, and willingness to kind of really engage with it. And I've mentioned it before on the podcast, but I think that my involvement at the YAF really hit at the absolute right time. I was kind of asked to consider it, and I'm so glad that I did, because it's I wouldn't have made the friends that I've made between the two of you guys, as well as so many others. But I think it opened, like you said, Ilya. I think that kind of cohort and the things that sort of have spawned from it, that have resonated as ripples in the Institute, whether those ripples are readily apparent, kind of the through line back to it, kind of that genealogy of where some of those things and why some of those things happen. Think about the mini MBA.
Yeah.
Like, why did that happen? I don't know. Wonder who came up with that, right? The AI Leadership Institute. Oh, I don't know. Like we were doing simulcast things in multiple cities with 600 or 700 people, with keynotes,
Long before the pandemic,
way before anybody was on Zoom, and so I think a lot of those things are attributable to that cohort, to that blend and that mix of people. One thing you didn't mention in your bio is kind of which state you're from, and I think that's sort of, I've always found that sort of absolutely unique, to where you are now and kind of what you're doing now. And then with that, can you tell me why? I don't think I've ever heard you say it. How did Plus Lab? How did that come to be? What's the origin story there?
Yeah, so I'm from the great state of Nebraska. I was born and raised there to immigrant parents. My dad was a war refugee, and growing up there, hearing what it means to be a refugee, understanding, my dad experienced severe loss, hunger, cold, fright. Between at age 7 and on, he saw horrific things that really shaped his love of the simplest things in life and the love of family, and also imbued in all of us how to help people. We have to help people in our lives. There's no other reason that you're here is to help people and enjoy the times that you have together. So that's that piece. The Plus Lab is the second iteration of my studio. The first one was called the Design Collective. I went out with a partner, James Chen, and the Design Collective, we just wanted to create a collaborative studio that we would broaden the tent by collaborating with everybody: sculptors, dancers, musicians, social scientists, all those things. And I really wanted to understand how to collaborate with everybody, with this true belief that architecture at its best is a reflection of culture. So how is it that my design team is limited to MEPs, structural engineers, interior designers, and architects? So we did that for several years. 9/11 hit. We had to fire everybody. We let everyone go. And I didn't want to do that again, but I bought the office and I rebranded it, called Plus Lab. Plus, because we are additive to any process, we are guests in any process. We are not the generators of process. We make everything that needs to be done better, and we bring it to life. The lab is it's an acronym for landscape architecture and building. And it used to be land use, but we just said landscape architecture and building because we wanted to make sure that we're understanding the scale at which you engage something has the entire geography at play. And architecture has many forms and that you may not be building. But then we did say, the tectonics of building is something that we're very good at. And that's how Plus Lab came about. And we've never kind of looked back, but we built on that ethos of collaborating with everybody. And it's made my current practice successful. And when I say we, you don't do this alone. All my employees have a stake in the office. They profit share at the end of every year because they work hard, you get paid. That's what it is. We work smart, we get paid. So that's the genesis of what the practice is like, and it seems to work. I can't complain.
No, thank you for explaining that, because I think that and I love a good origin story for architecture practices. I think that I've shared it with both of you, but I've shared it here on the podcast too. Is that it's just for a kid who didn't know he wanted to be an architect, didn't even know what an architect was.
Yeah.
When I got into architecture school, it was trying to figure out, like you say, is who are these people? How do they work? How do these collaboratives work? How do all these influences come into bear on a particular project? And then as you mature and experience more things, you realize that breadth of that collaboration really can be so many more things. And where that expertise can come in, like you say, as an additive process, is that's there's a in that maturity as a designer, it's not that you can't be, like we kind of come back to the sketch and the designer, there's an ability and there's a confidence, in all those things. And that can come at any time. It's not an age thing. But I think that there's a maturity kind of as a designer in recognition of all of your influences and who you influence. And I think that what I appreciate always sort of, dipping in and kind of following what you're doing with your work and your collaboratives work, that's really evident, and I think that sharing of knowledge is really powerful. And it's a great influence for so many of us. I mean, and you've shared even your studios, your teaching, with Kurt and I, and that's been
fun.
Been a pleasure. Yeah.
It's been fun. You've seen. Oh, hey, we got some guests. Awesome.
We'll take this brief
commercial interruption. Having you guys
family first.
Yeah, exactly. Step into my studios has been amazing because and with Kurt, you've reciprocated. I've sat in your studios as well. It's great that the students see those perspectives, but also that you get an idea that the students that I love working with, these kids at City Tech, they're my kids. And I say that because they're all first generation born, recent immigrants. It's a minority serving institute. And being first generation born in the US, I know what that family dynamic is rushing through, trying to be a good American while being a good from where you're from. My dad was always struggling, being a good Ukrainian and trying to raise us with these values, and then also saying, "Oh well, but you're going to go and play baseball." He never played a lick of baseball in his life. He's trying to make that balance, and so I see the struggles of those kids and making sure education is first and foremost. I love those kids, and having you guys come by and seeing their work makes me so happy because you've been very complimentary and straightforward about their work. The ones that they're working their butts off, and most of them are working their way through school. So it's been pretty amazing journey there. I'm going to continue that.
Well, and I think that the other thing is having a practice in New York City. I mean, for me, God, it's enviable. I mean, it's like if there's an envy moment, like, I mean, I have those moments, like I will admit it, like I'll fully admit it. Like, New York City holds a dear place in my heart. But it's like,
I got a
dipping
desk
in.
for you, buddy.
Hey,
come on over.
maybe,
desk.
yeah.
Full throttle.
But all gas, no brakes. But at the same time, it's also sort of dipping into those studios and seeing the students talk about their neighborhoods, talk about the places they're living, and then having that moment to work with you or to collaborate with these guest jurors that are coming in to influence and discuss their projects and sort of kind of question it, interrogate it, but at the same time, it's still collaborative. And that you're able to bring in that level of expertise that you as a practitioner, Kurt and I are well aware of it, but seeing it, Ilya as an instructor, as a teacher, is sort of it's a special moment, because we can see that you could go tip of the iceberg with all these students, but you're also trying to drill in and give them that extra opportunity that they're working with you, and you're all the knowledge and experience that you're dealing with in your particular projects and how that comes to bear in the projects they're working on. I think all the sea level rise in New York City, and we've seen all the studies and all the glamorous little renderings and whatever, but sitting in on a studio project where the students are front of mind, realizing what their future looks like, and able to talk about it, and are having that engagement because of the project that you're presenting to them, and I don't necessarily know how many other opportunities they're getting with that per se.
Thanks. I appreciate that. I'm dedicated to bringing more hands to this fight, and these kids, they know what's coming, and when they're armed with the possibility of responding to it, it's not a matter of experience at that point. It's a matter of their responses are incredible and illuminating, and they just want to get at the work. They can't wait to graduate to change the paradigm of climate action and climate shocks and stresses. They just are hungry to get at it. And I think I always tell my students this: I'm not your teacher. I'm a facilitator. You guys are extraordinarily powerful. I am going to make sure that the power that you have will be brought to bear on these projects. And I'm going to be very, very hard on you when you are not being true to what you're trying to do. And these kids, they appreciate it, and they do a lot of really good work, and they all come out getting jobs. Some of them, as you've seen, Jamie, have been hired right out of my studio in the middle of a jury because their work is extraordinary. And these are leads from some of the major firms in New York City. They're in there, they're looking at this kid, they're online, they're going, holy crap. You mean to tell me you're 19 years old and you produced all this work in how many weeks? Why don't you come and work for me? And it's happened more than once. So I appreciate what you're saying. I attribute it to all these kids. These kids have drive, and I appreciate them.
Yeah. Now that I'm also teaching and practicing at the same time, here in Michigan, we're a different part of the country. There's definitely different demographics, but I would agree. We still have, we wouldn't necessarily have the most, say, diverse, because it's Michigan, but we do. But also because we are Michigan, we are home to, one of the biggest or the biggest Middle Eastern population outside of the Middle East. So there are, I still get to engage with a lot of the same sort of first generation college students. And I would agree that they are some of the hardest workers that have the most sort of focus and drive to that. And then also, I not to steal any thunder, but it's more of the thunder of the students. It's or put the emphasis on them is that it's always exciting when they win a scholarship or get a job, right out the gate.
Great.
And I feel like the the proud parent, even though I'm not, it's like, go forth, take what you know and move forward. Those are I guess my point about getting a little sentimental about those things is this speaking of cohorts, right? The students that are studying architecture right now, and maybe, probably many majors, many degree paths, they don't necessarily have the patience to wait for this sort of drawn out experience path. They're like, okay, let me go, right? Like, let's go, let's figure it out. And maybe it comes from a little bit of like the influence of the tech industry, where it's sort of like the fail fast, but just keep moving, which I'm not against. I mean, I think the idea is just continually just target and attack something, and then see what comes out, and then just keep moving in a positive direction. And I hope that the energy that this younger generation of architecture students specifically can take hold of the profession that we will not eventually, but we will be handing over to them, because we can't work forever, so we have to be able to transfer this knowledge set, and then let them move on and take it in a direction, whether we can predict it or not.
I don't know. There's some technology out there. I think it's going to allow us to work for thousands of years.
I mean, Kurt's kind of a fatalist sometimes, but usually I'm the one who gets Jamie, your sketches feel very dystopian, but Kurt, I don't know where we got dark there for a minute. But no, I think.
Well, I hope you don't take it the wrong way. My point, I know think you're teasing me, but
yeah, I am teasing, of course. I mean, it's all love. But it's, I think that, as you guys, I mean, I'm not teaching right now, so it's like I don't have that, so I get to live vicariously through both of you. And then when you pull me in for a jury or discussion, which I'm happy to do, I always enjoy. But I think that it's really evident. I mean, I've got a sophomore in college right now, who's trying to figure it out. And as you say, Kurt, I think that, this generation, does have, kind of a lot of different influences on them, as each generation, does. But I think that I think what's not being talked about as much, that I think is sort of interest, to me, and I'm sort of waiting for somebody to kind of, latch onto it, is this idea of, what happens when those Gen Xers in architecture who actually stayed in architecture, actually, where everybody realizes that it's not that they're the glue, but they're still there, and that they're of a mindset already. They've always been of a mindset of collaboration. And now you've got a generation in sort of Gen Z that is really, wants to collaborate. They're born to collaborate. They don't necessarily know how to do it. They don't have all the pieces figured out, but they are a generation that could be so transformative, and I think that they will be.
They will be.
That I think that, to your point, Ilya, I want to stay on the ride. I don't want to get off. I want to see where they go, because I mean, I'm working.
These guys give me hope. These guys give me such utter hope. Yeah.
I mean, I've got one in my studio right now, and it's such a pleasure to work with them, and just to see that their worldview is so different. But at the same time, there is still that level of collaboration. I can still teach things, and I can also learn a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
And that's why it's that keeps me going. That's. Did you say 1,000 years? I'm not sure about 1,000.
But no, yeah, I was just joking. That from AI to whatever holds you in this ability to keep working. But I agree with you that these kids they give me hope. But I just like in all my work with indigenous communities, I'm a guest, and when I say facilitator to my students, I try to recognize to them and be very honest that they are powerful. They're powerful before I step into the room, and all I'm doing is trying to shape that power into serious tools that you can really make stuff with. And that I don't think is ever going to change. That recognizing that power of this next generation is just something that I hope the industry really understands, that these guys are already leaders. Giving them the ability to lead and just opening the door, they're ready to go. They're
Well, and it's not, I mean, I'm not trying to be political about it, by any means, by sort of phrasing it in this way. I'm just not sure how to phrase it otherwise. But it's like, when folks now sort of refer to culture wars, or how people are viewing a generation of people who are, have grown up in a certain way and the way their worldview is, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. My whole take is that, yes, they've grown up in a certain way, that but the advantage, it's like I'm the glass. I mean, as much as I am dystopian in my sketches, like I'm the glass full guy, and I'm looking at that as their worldview is not necessarily potentially so different than mine, but it's that they are more, as a generation, that they are more open to things that they don't understand.
Yeah. Fearless.
And there's a fearlessness to that.
I love it.
And if you can, as sort of that mature designer in me, if I can harness that, if I can harness that in a way where I can help them, and it's like if you are coming into a community and that community doesn't feel like they've been listened to for a long time, or it's like, I mean, I was told in one project, is like, you weren't the first one to come in and ask me those questions, and I'm like, well, all I can tell you is I'm not going anywhere.
There you go.
Like I'm going to probably ask you those questions respectfully. Hopefully you'll give me, the same answers or better answers, but that we're also going to continue this conversation. And with the knowledge that, you're going to trust that I'm not going to leave, until we move this whole thing forward. And I think that, that's an opportunity for me to recognize where I am in my career or what community I'm working in. But if I'm able to share that with a generation that is more inherently open, to engage that, in a, like you say, in a fearless way, where they're fearless because they're like, I need to be here. They recognize they need to be there. They also might be scared to death because they don't know what the hell's coming next, because they can't see. That's the thing, is this generation cannot see around corners. They can't. They have so many, hang-ups in that kind of respect. But I think those things are outweighed by all the pluses, the
pluses definitely outweigh. I don't think we could see around the corner at that age either, but the fearlessness is what sets them apart, because they and something you said, Kurt, trying and failing and keep trying and trying and trying, this ability that they will not be defeated. The notion of a loss seems to be it's just a speed bump. I'm going to keep going. That fearlessness. So I wouldn't equate it to drive. I just to the longevity of just a continued effort. My gosh. So that's why I'm so hopeful with these folks, these kids. They are my fuel, man. I just can't get enough of just hearing them, seeing the way they interact with design and all aspects of culture. I guess almost as much as the projects that I work on with these with Indigenous people. And to your point, Jamie, Indigenous people or communities on the front lines of people that you work with and that I work with and others out there, they have not been listened to. And there's always an assumption, I'm going to go in and save that community. And that's the wrong assumption. That community already knows the problems they have. They are powerful. They are self-actualized, and they know what the solution sets they have. And being able to listen, translate that, so it turns into a product or something that they recognize and see in themselves, is the most satisfying part of the work. because that then turns into the key that unlocks funding that helps them actualize the ideas they already had. And I tell you, if more architects knew how to do that, or really knew that work existed, you would have more work than you could possibly imagine for the rest of your lives, because it's needed everywhere. And that's how I equate this conversation about these kids with that kind of work. That is the work.
Yeah. I echo that just briefly from being here in Flint, right? I mean, there's a lot of the same, in the sense, the sort of people think they have the magic bullet that's going to save this or that aspect.
Yeah.
But the people of Flint, I found, since I'm not originally from here, but have been here for 12 years, by listening and being, right, without trying to prescribe something, ever since I've moved into the city and live and work here, is these people are extremely resilient. Otherwise they wouldn't still be here.
Yeah.
And that they're the way to use the tools as an architect, right? The things that we're trained, design buildings or coordinate trades, things like that, work with construction, doesn't necessarily look like the book definition of how to practice architecture. Much like I imagine what your work is with indigenous cultures abroad and locally, or stateside. And but I think then sort of tying in again this idea of like the future architects that we're teaching is their ability to sort of recognize those distinct identities and find a way to speak to it. And there is no one size fits all or one system, one methodology that you apply and go project A, B, C, D, and keep going. And I found that, maybe I'm not critiquing any local peers of mine, but
there's no shade.
No, I can't. I mean, but no, my point.
I like how he's like, no, I can't do it.
As preemptively, but sometimes the projects that I get, wouldn't necessarily. They're not going to necessarily always make the cover of an architecture magazine, but they've improved the quality of either life or business.
You helped people
for that client because I helped them solve a problem, which is wading through the bureaucracy, through permitting and change of use or change of ownership, rehabbing old buildings. So I'm not trying to toot my own horn as much as I'm trying to just build upon the thing. I guess to make a point to it is these conversations between the three of us here today and many of our friends, circling back to the starting point of our colleagues from the Young Architects Forum, is there are so many ways through this profession that are, say, non-traditional, but still involve all of the tools and skill set that we've learned through school and practice that still provide that presence. And I think to put a pin in what I'm saying, use all the jargon, is ever since I met both of you, but Ilya being our special guest, has inspired me to not rest on sort of norms and really kind of follow the passions that I always had that I never or didn't always tap into. And just seeing what you've been doing through those different trajectories of your own, practice, and then into your speaking now, and your sort of what's the word that you use when influencing is one, but
yeah, Ilya is an influencer. Like he needs a TikTok if he doesn't have a TikTok. But it's a climate TikTok.
It could be a conflict.
Or it's just a where in the world is Ilya TikTok. Like I'm telling you,
the clock is ticking.
Yeah, I know. Hey,
Well, that's kind, guys, and I appreciate that, Kurt, because I've always said that you really have to follow your passions in this. If you truly love what you're doing, success comes to you. And how you define your own success. I sleep well at night because, just like you said, you help people. I help people, and the gains in the studio and its security and expansion follow because we believe in what we do. We believe in the ethos of really giving greater voice and visibility to frontline communities. We practice that every day. We're very selective in our projects that really they have to match that ethos. And now that we're at that point, it really does work. But what I really want to circle back to is we talked about this fearlessness. And you know what, guys, when we were talking about the YAF in our cohort, what gave me fearlessness was us all working together as the YAF. And so if we mirror what this current generation has of, they've got the full deck of cards with fearlessness. We did that through our cohort at the YAF, that we fed off of each other. We helped each other. We became fearless to make these decisions because, the practice was not always that way. There was always struggles early on, and everyone experiences that. But to really have the passion to stick with what you're doing and getting there is proof positive that this community that we have formed and shaped to the greater AIA and our cohort really make a big difference. But yeah, that's why I think these things tie together. So I'm going to take that pin right back out, man.
Yeah. No. That's all fair. So I know that we try and talk about the coffee. You did mention that you do with the coffee and the cream, and that's totally okay. I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to just drop this right here is like, this might be in your future. So yeah. So yes, in fact, Kurt and I have a podcast, but we also have like an actual coffee, a collaboration with Ruthless. They are a purveyor of original Flint coffee. So this comes out of Flint, Michigan. They love the original artwork.
Wow.
Tonight, today, this afternoon, this evening, I am finishing up my pot of Dr. Congo, Kurt. Oh my God.
Is that the last of it?
Yeah, this is the last of it, but it's so good. It's so good. But I did want to kind of transition us to a sketch. We picked one today that Ilya, you might be surprised at, but okay. I think you'll appreciate, just so that we can sort of just chat about sort of all the things. This is an all the things sketch, right? I mean, it's, yeah.
Let me zoom in a tiny bit here.
Nice.
Yeah, this is usually the moment at which Kurt says, I really love the dystopian architecture.
Is that when this usually comes up?
Yeah.
Well, in sketches that have some of the motifs in the background that you see here with these sort of abstract forms.
You mean the broken airplane wings?
Or that. Yeah. I mean, it's interpretive, right? That's the dystopian or protopian. I like that one.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Kurt introduced me to this other term. I haven't gotten used to it yet. But I think, Ilya, one of the things that I sort of was curious about, because it's like, I know that, even in your own family, right, you've got this whole kind of art and dance and architecture. How, you talked a little bit about sort of the origin of the first version of the firm and sort of your practice in New York. But, when you see sketches like this or sort of things like this as a jumping off point, how are other arts sort of influencing your design, your work more as a designer or just as an architect in general?
Yeah, great question. I alluded to it before, that architecture is a reflection of culture. And when I was entering architecture school, my father and mother were very much into the arts. My father was he was an engineer, but a concert pianist, right? He wrote his own. Um, he was classically trained after the war, and grew up in Germany, and but decided to go into engineering. And so there's always this sort of dichotomy of everyone in my family is into the arts, yet for practical sake, because of an immigrant family, no, you have to do something that secures your future in terms of job and money. It came to me, and architecture is the greatest of all the seven arts. It is the assembly of all of the arts together as a reflection of culture. So I seem to be the one in my family that could synthesize and live out that dream of being someone who is practicing the art of architecture and realizing how you have in my father's eyes, a secure family, a job that will really propel you forward, because it's not exactly hanging on just the arts. So that's kind of where that comes from. When I see this, though, it reminds me of the the old the back of the MoMA. Before they did the renovation, there were a series of pools and plinths that had sculptures, and this looks like a Rodin,
Right.
That is placed on those plinths, with reflective elements into the water pool that are running across there. And then, of course, there are various things there. And so when I see this, it immediately transports me there, or to a similar kind of a setting with this contemporary monolithic sculptures with reflecting pools set in a juxtaposed with all of these beautiful green features. And whether that's a statue or an actual person, I see it as almost like a bronze statue, just catching all of the light.
No, I love that. I mean, and that's the thing is, I mean, this is my like selfish moment. Oftentimes in the podcast, like Kurt and I will talk about my sketches, and and in some cases it's me listening to somebody else sort of describe kind of what they're seeing, and sometimes it completely elicits a response from them that I'm not expecting. It's very personal or reflective of some place they've been, or a story or something like that. And that's always wonderful, and so what you're describing too is it ties that whole thing about, who we are as people, and kind of why we do the things that we do, and sort of our, not necessarily, all the reasons we do things, but I mean, I think that perspective that we're sort of given kind of early in life, and then the choices that we make afterwards, and then ultimately what those influences sort of, how we continue to see and analyze things, as architects, as designers, and I think that that's sort of our superpower, is that we're listening to and absorbing all this information from the people and the places that we engage, but then it's I like to think of it as our willingness to try and synthesize that, try and find a way forward from that, try and find something out of that, that we can then in turn share, and then hopefully it becomes this sort of reciprocal loop, and so some of that is an art, and some of that's in architecture, or problem solving. So the way you sort of describe this is like when you said Rodin, it's like, that's the thing, is that a lot of, for me, when I traveled to Europe the first time and was in Paris and went to the Rodin Museum, I was just dumbstruck. Just dumbstruck by it. And I always had appreciated sculpture. I always appreciated, art in varying forms and whatnot. My mom, had a real appreciation for art, but and not an artist herself by any stretch. But it's I think that those kind of moments for me kind of always sort of resonate, and then I find myself going back to them, at certain points. And I realize those influences on my own work. But then the beauty is when I get some new influences and sort of how those start to integrate and how those kind of figure into things. So yeah, it's I like that you immediately wanted to set this in a place. That was I that's a treasure for me. So thank you.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome.
And
it's great
to throw in just 2 cents from my perspective is maybe some of the theme of what we've talked about today, right? Sort of helping people, but people, right? Is, Jamie does, we're all trained, right, to understand scale from a human proportion and why human figures wind up in architect sketches, right? And so Jamie takes it one step further in these sort of what do you call those, life drawing kind of poses from time to, in this case it's not necessarily a specific sketching session with an actual model, but the human form, right, that shows up in Jamie's sketches in contrast or complement to the various backgrounds that he puts them against, I think always has an interesting commentary on our human condition. And this is sort of subtext, or definitely me reading into the sketches a lot, but based on what we've talked about a lot today is I guess I can't think of another way to put it, but the sort of fragility of human life, and how the vulnerability of this particular nude figure, semi-nude figure against the background that it's drawn with, kind of it's sort of driven by all the discussion we've had today.
Well, and it's funny. I don't think I've ever said this to Kurt, but it's sort of as he was describing it dawned on me. But so when we're in architecture school, right? All of us went there. Doesn't matter where you went to school. They all, at some point talked about a lot of the same things. Early on, like somebody probably used the word figure and field or figure field, and when I heard that for the first time, like I thought of a literal figure, like a human figure. and so it was because I wasn't coming from like an architecture perspective, with my education, more of an artist. And it sort of, I think what I didn't sort of, make a lot of those connections till later in life, but it sort of dawned on me that, a lot of the times the way that I'm looking at, these quick sketches in my sketchbook that I return to quite a bit as sort of a general theme is it's a way for me to, kind of find, sort of the narrative that Kurt's sort of talking about. And it's, whether it's, trying to push an idea of a particular place, or it's an idea of sort of, a figure against sort of this abstraction. It's interesting to kind of hear it kind of, with these other themes that both of you sort of, found in a sketch like this. And I don't think either one of them is, necessarily wrong. I think both of them are, that's the beauty of some of these exercises. And for me as a creative, it's getting stuff down on the page. It's working through it, and sort of, and staying the course, kind of, to, what Ilya was saying about kind of, not quitting. But yeah, I appreciate both of your comments. I think it's, some great perspectives on a sketch that was sort of fun, and actually, like I said, a lot of these come out relatively quick, on purpose. So
yeah, it's really good. I like what Kurt said about the figure. I like what you're talking about, is that your first inkling of what a figure is before I went to because before I went to architecture school, I was very much into painting and sculpting and sketching, a lot of sketching. And what I was told was when I was reading, I think it was a quote from Picasso. I could be wrong, but Picasso said the hardest things to draw are human hands. And I remember reading that, or it was Picasso, or it was one of the great masters. So from age 12 on the way through like 16 or 17, all I was sketched were hands, and I could sketch hands perfectly. And then I could sketch hands holding things, especially really delicate things like flowers and plants and things like that. And I could just, because it was almost like a challenge. Oh, that's the hardest thing. And if this master of the arts said, this is the hardest thing, if I master the hardest thing, oh, what does that say about my potential? And, you're thinking about that as like, a 12 or 13-year-old kid. But it really drove me to pick up a sketchbook all the time and draw all the time. And but it was that very narrow subject matter. But when I got to architecture school, boy, did it pay dividends. I could sketch just about anything.
Well, and that's the thing, is you lean into this sort of
Yeah.
inner monologue, and this these inner rules that you place on the sketch, and
Yeah.
and it becomes kind of a wonderful when you look at it that way and sort of back yourself out. And that's, I think, one of the things that we try and do with at least this podcast, is that we talk about a lot of different cultural events, and and bringing people on like yourself to talk about kind of career paths and kind of where they are as influencers to our work and to profession at large. But I think that it's also looking at sort of a simple act like a sketchbook, and sitting down with it for yourself and kind of figuring out the things that you need to work on, and that you can do sort of as a daily ritual, and that it be productive in a way that is super exciting for yourself, and then obviously I like to share my sketches and talk about them. But yeah, this is something I think that we appreciate talking about, and that you're able to kind of engage in a variety of different ways with us.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, sketching is essential, especially in these engagements with communities, because you hear a lot of this, not like that, like this. And when you hear that, you know that you're in a dialogue,
Mm-hmm.
and they're picking up an instrument of, whether it's a kid with a Crayola or whatever it is, but you're working on the same sheet. And if I'm working on the same sheet with someone and we're trying to explain something together graphically, and when I hear that, no, not like that, like this, I know that they're beginning to express the deep solution sets that they have for their own communities, and it just becomes a pleasure. They aren't beautiful collaborative drawings, but in an aesthetic way, but they're so rich,
Right.
That are the basis, the platform, the foundation for creative purpose. Oh my God!
Yeah.
No,
Way
I think,
to tie it in.
yeah, that's the creative act, right? Is that, and
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, the gatekeeping of the creative act is it's garbage. We don't need to be doing that.
no,
The fact that we're comfortable with it as architects and designers is because we've been trained to become comfortable with it.
yeah,
But then, like you said, is then then the real superpower, the real influence, the real opportunity for us as a practice and as a profession and as individuals is to realize that engagement, with those communities, and having those dialogues, and letting them partake of the process,
yeah.
is that's where the real stuff gets exciting for
That's the
everybody,
joy. That is,
for
oh
everybody
yeah,
involved. Yeah.
100%. That is the joy of the work. Uh, I almost want to just get at it right now.
Yeah, we do. This is a group hug moment. This is the group hug moment in the podcast. So, but thank you again, Ilya. This has been fabulous. We appreciate you being on the road, but still, finding time to join us.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks. I reiterate that because you've been extremely generous. We've kept you a long time away from dinner, so we will let you go. And give me a few seconds to cue up our outro. But yeah.
Sure. Well, guys, thanks. Keep doing the work you're doing. We can be the change we want to see in the world if we just collectively keep doing what we're doing. And I firmly believe that. And I appreciate your friendship. Always will.
Thanks again. We'll see you in DC.
Yep.
You can count on it.